The story of Palestine. We'll talk about the Palestinian cause and the events that took place in the 50 years prior to the 1948 war. Palestine resides in a special geographical location. Jebusite, a Canaanite tribe, lived there 6,000 years ago. They settled in Al-Quds, Jerusalem, which was known as Jebus. Then, more Canaanite tribes settled in the northern part of Palestine, which used to be known as the Land of Canaan. Most Palestinians of today descend from these Canaanite tribes. The name Palestine probably came from Philistine, tribes who came from the sea. They settled and integrated with the original people, and that land became known as Palestine. Over time, many nations have lived in Palestine and took rule over it. The last nation was the Islamic nation, which ruled Palestine for 1,100 years. For many centuries, Muslims, Christians, and Jews lived together peacefully in Palestine. By the end of the 19th century, Zionist schemes started to arise and the Palestinian tragedy began. At the time, Palestine's population was around 460,000. Jews made up 3% of the population. With the rise of the European nationalism, more Jews suffered persecution. So they started to organize themselves and to think about emigrating from Europe. But where to? The Jewish journalist Theodor Herzl answered this question in his book, where he called for a national homeland for the Jews. He suggested Palestine, Argentine, and other places in Africa as well. Then, several Jewish conferences took place to raise funds and support for this scheme, and Palestine was chosen to be the destination. Powerful Jews in the United Kingdom and the United States of America pressured their governments to support them as well. And the immigration of the Jews to Palestine began. 25,000 Jews came to Palestine from Eastern Europe and Russia. The Jews' population increased to 5%. We will see how these huge waves of immigrant Jews, filled with Zionist ideas, were the main reason for the Palestinian plight. With every influx of immigrants, problems regarding livelihood and land arose with the original people of Palestine. In 1891, Al-Quds notables appealed to the Ottoman government to stop Russian Jews' immigration and land ownership. But the immigration of the Jews did not stop. 40,000 Jews immigrated to Palestine and their population became 8%. With the collapse of the Ottoman Empire and the end of World War I, the UK and France divided the Levant region according to the Sykes-Picot Treaty. Then, the UK took over Palestine according to the San Remo Conference and promised to fulfill the Balfour Declaration. What is the Balfour Declaration? In 1917, the UK gave a secret promise to support the Jews in establishing a state in Palestine and support immigration and land ownership. This promise was backed up by the US government as well. This declaration had a significant effect on the Palestinian fate. A third wave of immigrants arrived and the Jews' population rose to 12%. Nonetheless, Jews' land ownership did not exceed 3% of the land. With these newcomers, Palestine's demography changed dramatically and more problems arose between the Palestinians and the Jews. 7 main Palestinian conferences were held to denounce the Balfour Declaration. First Intifada, uprising, broke out. Riot and disturbance broke out in Jaffa. A conference in Nablus called for a boycott with Zionists. The Supreme Muslim Council was established with the leadership of Amin al-Husseini. On the other side, the Haganah was established as a military Zionist organization. Although it was covert and illegal, Britain supported the unlawful, directly and indirectly. Meanwhile, Britain arrested every Palestinian who had a weapon in his house. More immigration waves came from Poland, Russia, Germany, and others. Jewish population increased to 17%. Riots around the Al-Barak Wall, Western Wall, broke out in Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. More Palestinians joined the resistance, and in 1933, Al-Quds' big revolt broke out. 2 years later, the leader Izzeddin al-Qassam died with his friends while fighting the British. Another wave of immigrants reached Palestine with 250,000 Jews. The Jews' population increased to 30%. The Big Palestinian Revolution. The Big Palestinian Revolution broke out against the British and Jewish gangs all over Palestine. This revolution was bigger than the previous uprisings. It started with a strike for 6 months. During the revolt, Britain established the Peel Commission. It recommended to divide Palestine into a Jewish state and an Arab state, and for Jerusalem to stay under the British mandate. This meant evacuating hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from the proposed Jewish state to the Arab state. At the time, Jews only owned 5.5% of Palestine land. Nevertheless, the proposed Jewish state would reside on 33% of Palestine. Palestinians rejected these propositions, and they were not implemented. Under the revolt pressure, Britain issued what was known as MacDonald White Paper. The paper bans Jewish immigration to Palestine after 5 years and offers Palestinians independence within 10 years. The Zionist movement rejected these recommendations, and terrorist organizations such as Haganah, Irgun, and Stern committed bloody massacres not only against the Palestinians, but also against the British to force them to withdraw from Palestine so they could establish a Jewish state. One of the most bloody operations was the bombing of the King David Hotel in Jerusalem, where British officials used to meet. Palestine Partition Plan 181. In 1947, Britain decided to withdraw from Palestine and asked the UN for its recommendations. The UN convened and proposed the famous partition plan, Resolution 181. The resolution proposes to divide Palestine into 2 states, an Arab state and a Jewish state, while Al-Quds stays under special international jurisdiction. The USA and the Soviet Union supported this resolution. At that time, Jews owned only 6.5% of Palestine, while the resolution gave the Jews 56% of the land. Palestinians and Arabs rejected this resolution, and it was not implemented. It was clear that a war would break out in Palestine. Haganah called for army conscription for all Jews between the ages of 17 to 25. On the other hand, the League of Arab States created the Arab Liberation Army. Another wave of immigrant Jews reached Palestine. The Jewish population increased to 31.5% prior to the war. At that time, Jews owned only 9% of Palestine. This figure illustrates Jews' land ownership. 1948 War. In 1948, Britain withdrew from Palestine and the war between the Arabs and the Zionists broke out. The war ended with Zionists taking over more land. They occupied 78% of Palestine and established the State of Israel on this part. The USA immediately recognized this new state. In the following year, Israel joined the UN as an official country, and it was recognized internationally. Due to the 1948 war, Al-Quds was divided into 2 parts: the western part that was taken by the Jews, and the eastern part that stayed under the Jordanian control. In 1967, Zionists occupied the eastern part of Al-Quds. From 9% pre-war to 78% post-war, this is the 1948 war Nakba catastrophe. To summarize the primary cause of the Palestinian plight, the main problem was with the huge waves of Jewish immigrants with a Zionist ideology which states that Palestine belongs to Jews and Jews alone, and that they should establish their own state there with any means possible, regardless of the fate of the original people. Big colonial countries also conspired to help achieve this occupational plot, which fit right with their strategic goals in the region. All this led to create the Palestinian cause and the plight of Palestinians.